Once upon a time, there was a girl named Cinderella. Unfortunately, her mom just passed away from an illness, so her father had to marry a new wife who had two stepdaughters who were pretty on the outside but evil at heart. Her evil stepsisters took away her clothes and put an old gray gown on her with wooden shoes. They often laughed and mocked her. They forced her to sleep in the worst room of the house on something I would barely call a mattress. She was also forced to do a number of chores. For instance, washing the house, the dishes, the floor, and her sisters would often pour plates of lentils into the fire and make her pick it out, just for fun. One day, her father came back from a fair, and while he brought his two stepdaughters both dresses and pearls from his trip, he brought Cinderella only but a twig. Cinderella took her new twig and planted it near her mother's grave, and every time she would cry about the death of her mother, the tears would go straight into the planted twig and make the tree grow bigger and bigger magically. Every time Cinderella would wish for something, magical birds would fly down from the tree and grant her whatever that wish was. Seems like the twig wasn't such a bad present after all. It was now time to party. The king had invited all the women of his kingdom to come join his son in a ball so that he can choose the right wife for himself. Every single girl got so excited to meet the prince, especially Cinderella and her two stepsisters. However, while her stepsisters were allowed to go, Cinderella's stepmother did not let her go. Cinderella begged and pleaded until she could go, so the stepmother gave her one option: that she could clean out all the lentils she had poured into the fire. In 1 hour, Cinderella would be able to go. But of course, this was an impossible task for her alone. This is where Cinderella's magical bird friends come into play. They cleaned up all the lentils for her in less than an hour and even got her a dress for the ball. She was finally ready to fall in love and meet her prince. The moment she arrived in her magical carriage, her and the prince already started having chemistry. When she got into the ball, she looked so beautiful, not even her own stepsisters recognized her. But the prince was astonished by her beautiful looks and asked her to dance. The prince showed deep interest into Cinderella and did not want to dance with anyone else but her. Unexpectedly, Cinderella noticed the time. It was almost 12 and she had to get home before her stepsisters and stepmother saw that she wasn't home cleaning and instead at the ball. She ran out as fast as she could. She didn't even realize that she left her shoe behind. But thankfully, the prince had found it.
The king was desperate to find his princess, so he called to all the girls in the land and asked, "Whoever claims the shoe will be my princess, and I will marry her." When Cinderella's evil stepmother heard the news, she ran to both her daughters and told them that they should go to the palace and try on the shoe. But one problem occurred. They both knew that their feet would be way too big to fit into that small little glass slipper. So they decided to cut off their toes and heels so that they would be able to fit into it and the prince would think that they were the one he danced with at the ball. The eldest daughter went first to the castle to try on the shoe. But when she did, the prince noticed that her foot was bleeding and saw that her toe had been cut off. He said with anger, "Get out of my castle, for you are not the one that danced with me at the ball." When the second sister came in, the same thing had occurred. He noticed her heel was bleeding and saw that it had been cut off so that she would fit in the shoe. And he knew that she wasn't the one either. So he said, "Bring me your last sister." Both sisters refused to allow her dirty old maid of a sister to come before the prince and try on the shoe. But the prince had insisted and forced her to come in. When Cinderella had showed herself before the prince and the king, they were shocked at first. But then, once she tried on the shoe and saw that it fit perfectly, the prince's eyes lit up with joy. Cinderella and her prince got married immediately after and were very happy together. Now that Cinderella was marrying the prince, the two stepsisters had kissed up to her so that they could be in her favor. And Cinderella's magical birds came down and picked at their eyes until they got blind. They all lived happily ever after. Well, kind of. The end.